Hey guys, and welcome to my video for today. So, some of you want me to do a melee guide for Phantom Forces, and I'll be giving you one in this short video. Now, apart from that, I wanted to say that I'm trying to build a little community of melee players in Phantom Forces. Well, you don't have to melee, as I do some of the Spezi sheet stuff in my server. But if you're interested in joining, the link will be in the description. Same thing with my resource, the melee sheet, as well as the weapon loadout sheet, of course. Anyway, let's get into the video. Now, one of the most fundamental parts about meleeing is having good movement, or at least like having solid movement in general. Because, yeah, I know it kind of sucks that we don't really have Emperor jump sliding anymore, but on the screen here shortly, I'll show you some keybinds here. These are my keybinds that I like to use, and for the most part, they're not too out of the ordinary, but I tend to have jump no vault binded to space and vault binded for Q, because if you're meleeing, to be honest, who's going to be using the aim down sight thing from Q? I don't. I sure as hell don't. One of the best ways to move is much easier to do with this tech, because instead of like having to spam space, you could just like control like when and where you want to vault, which is pretty useful. Most of the time I use this in chain vaulting, and chain vaulting is where you just do this, where you go around jumping around and you just vault spam. You jump and then you vault, and then you jump and then you vault, and it's currently the fastest way to move around with the current movement system before they do their test place rewrite. So this portion of the metro right here is really good for chain vaulting. You can chain vault off the middle part or the sides over here. You could also do these benches, and this goes all the way down to the other side, and it's on both team sides, so you can just chain vault on the metros. Middle map shops are also really good to chain vault on, and then there's some other maps I like to chain vault on, such as Suburbia with the greenhouse, the trampoline, and the helicopter with cars over here. And then arguably one of the best maps to chain vault on would be Bazaar, because you have so many areas to choose from. You can just chain vault on that entire map. I won't put any more maps here for now, because I think you can kind of understand the point of in like where the chain vault at. Alright, another important factor is this next part right here. It's an important part of meleeing to pick the right maps, because if you play on the wrong types of maps that don't fit your playstyle, then you probably won't do well with melee. Now, I'm not saying you can't melee on every map, it's just like, I don't melee on every map, because my playstyle doesn't really fit for it. Everyone will play differently with melees, have their own playstyles, but at the end, this is usually what I play on, and some of you may agree or disagree, but I hope you guys can hear me out on why I like to play on these maps, and the ones that I don't like to play on. And maybe you can get some conclusions from it. All these maps here at the top are very good for meleeing. Fortress, Height, Rundown, Black Site, and Bazaar all have good elevation differences where it's like not too much, but there's some where you can like outplay people with it. There's lots of cover, but not too much cover, where it's not like super clustered, except maybe Rundown. Rundown's a little more clustered, but all of these maps are good. You can move around, outmaneuver people. You can use cover to your advantage. You can surprise people, and they're small for the most part. kind of want to be on smaller maps of meleeing because you have to run after people in order to get them. Then in the great tier, some of these maps most of these are great, but they're not as good as the ones above them because they usually have like one flaw. Like Favela, for example, here is like maze. You can barely find people on it. Elevation has a bit less cover everywhere and has more sightlines to be aware of. Metro 2025 is the same thing, except it's better than normal Metro because there's less sightlines and more flank routes. Containers is close quarters, but it barely has any cover and a lot of sightlines, so you really wouldn't want to play Containers. Penthouse is kind of like a mixture of Elevation and Containers, where it's like it has a lot of good cover and elevation differences and everything. It's a close quarters map, but there's a lot of nasty sightlines on there. And everything else in the good tier and below, for the most part, like good tier is kind of the same things, but amplified, usually less cover everywhere. And I'll take Suburbia, for example. Maps in here tend to be a bit like lackluster in cover sometimes. They're more open than every other map above it, and you have to run further to get people, and sometimes it's the best thing. And then like in OK over here, where you have Warehouse, for example. Warehouse has a lot of cover, sure, but it's a very open map, and everyone can pen through the cover because the walls are like half a stud thick, less than that actually. And then everything in bad is just too open, not enough cover, and too big of maps. And Avoid is like the worst maps to play with melee on because no matter where you go, there's usually like a sniper or something locked onto you. And that's never fun again to play. You're just gonna have like a BFG aiming at you everywhere you walk on one of those maps. And sure, there's probably some counterplay, like in foxholes, for example, you can go into the trenches to hide or like the buildings, but for the most part, they're like not really good. And some of these maps are much better on different modes than the other maps. Like everything at the top is usually good with every game mode. Great, same thing, but good and OK is where it starts to falter, where some game modes are slightly better than others to play on. And it's kind of like Highway Lot here in OK. Like Koth Highway Lot is pretty good. Hardpoint Highway Lot is okay, and everything else is like mediocre. So like depending on like your play style, though, for the most part, you're gonna want to like be on the upper portion maps if you're gonna be meleeing. Another really important factor here when it comes to meleeing is choosing the right melees and getting to know the melee you chose. Now, I like to use a lot of different melees, and every single melee here, like in this game, has its own killing. As you can see, like, I don't have to be directly behind these guys to kill them, right? Like, I just one-shot that guy, and I'm not even behind him. I'm 90 degrees away from him. Then we have some other melees, which don't really have that good of a hitboxes like this thing. As you can see, like, every time I swing, compared to, like, a blade like this, like, look at this. This has so much more frameage compared to the Karambit. And then I go back to the Karambit, and you see I don't have any frameage when I first start or end the attack. It's kind of lame. It has better kill angles than the other thing for sure, than the classic knife, but for the most part, I just don't like using these reworked melees. They're all just kind of ruined. Like, you see I'm like running into this guy and it's not hitting them, when normally you could just stab, run into people, and it'll hit. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, man. Other melees can do this too, and it's like, this thing also has a massive blind spot up close. Like, you can literally, like, be inside of someone like this, and it just won't hit. Yeah, see, like, just not hitting. I have to look down for it to hit. And every melee has its own, like, blind spot, too. Like, the classic knife has one. The entrencher is a bit smaller, because it has a bigger hitbox, same with the cleaver. See what I mean by the hit frames? It's much better on something like the Cleaver because it's an older melee. And then here's the hockey stick, because this thing has the largest blind spot in the game. Like, dude, the hitbox is literally the end of the stick, as you can see. I'm like, it's a good melee, don't get me wrong. It's fast, but like, it has such a large blind spot. You gotta keep note of your blind spots. My own melee has a blind spot too. And you can like curve your swings on like any melee to get the most reach out of it. I tend to look up right with the slam skull like I did there. Some melees can also just one shot on a headshot like that. And like here. Just because they have such good kill angles, you only have to jump and it'll just one shot people. The slam skull isn't the only melee that can do this. There's a lot of other melees that can do it too. But for the most part, they're the ones that do it. And what I said about swinging your melees for proper range, if you look here with this Y-hander, dude, you can get up to like 16, 17 studs by just right-clicking and looking to the left. This is like what I do for basically every melee. So if you want to get the most range out of your melees, you want to like swing towards to where it like gives you the most benefit. As you can see, like the void staff here also has good range, but it doesn't like one shot or anything. This thing actually has terrible kill angles, but it's kind of justified. It has 17 studs of range. Grenades are a very important part of the melee playstyle. Depending on what kind of playstyle you have, you should probably use the according grenades. First grenade I'll go over is the T13. As you can see, I'm using it to kind of weaken people before I go to melee them. And this works with a bunch of melees. For the most part, you want to use fast attacking melees or melees with long reach that are weak. This grenade is also really good for objective-based game modes on maps, and they're best on maps like containers where they're open, because one major flaw with this grenade is that you're prone to hitting yourself because of the large explosion radius, and you don't want to do that. A very good melee this like synergizes with perfectly is the void staff here, is you could just grenade them once and do a whole sweep with the right click, and they just die. Overall, I'm still trying to learn this grenade, so I haven't really used it that much, but this definitely has some utility, so. The next grenade that I'll be talking about is Semtex. Semtex here has a multi-play style. It's kind of a multi-tool. You get 3 of them, and they have a decent explosion radius, but they're mainly for psychological tactics. Because with the Semtex being that it's loud and quite noisy, you're going to want it to just kind of be there. You want to throw it whenever you're like pushing up, or you could use it defensively like here and just have it block off a route. People don't tend to walk into it, but it does have a short fuse, so if it lands, people have to kind of run away from it fast. I like using this kind of similarly to how I use the pipe bomb, which I'll get to in a moment here, but for the most part you could just chuck out the Semtexes and get people to go away from them. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they'll just back away from the nades or find a different route, and you could trap them doing that, like how I trapped these people here. The third and second to last grenade I will be talking about is the pipe bomb. Now the pipe bomb here is pretty good for meleeing in my opinion. It's what I usually use, and for the most part it's not like the other grenades on here, because this grenade is actually more defensive than anything. Playstyle for this is pretty defensive and requires like strategic thinking in a way. Because, like, most of the time when you just see me, like, throwing the grenade around, it's usually to block off a route. Like, it looks like I'm randomly throwing it, but that's because I kind of am, but also am kind of not. Because you use this grenade mainly as a scare tactic. You just put the grenade in like whatever corridor you want, or like on the point, and people won't be on that point for 7 seconds because that's the fuse time of the grenade. This is basically like the best area denial grenade because of the fact that it has such a long fuse time and you make people wait. Now, if people realize that you just threw the grenade and didn't cook it, they'll usually go over it, but sometimes they might misjudge the timing and die to it because it has such a large explosion radius and no one expects the pipe bomb. Now, most of the time, when you're like flanking with the grenade, you just throw it in a corridor and then you just go around behind the enemy because most of the time they'll get clustered up in areas like this corridor, for example, in Black Site. They like to get behind the showers here. And this grenade isn't like effective on like larger maps because of the fact that like they're just gonna go around it. It's bad on open maps. It's better for CQC maps. The final grenade that I will be talking about is the V40. These grenades are they don't really have like too much utility other than the fact that they have good walk speed. Most of the time, you're only wanting to use these grenades if you're trying to use heavy melee, like one of the one-shot melees, like this Zweihander, World Buster, Stopper, that kind of thing. You can use these in your actual playstyle, but for the most part, if you do use them, you use them to get rid of people in annoying spots, like that house over here, where people just hold annoying angles against you, giving this a more passive-aggressive kind of playstyle, because you really have to be patient, because you have to sit there, cook the grenade, then toss it and kill them. Because this grenade has some of the farthest reaching throws in the game, and it doesn't really have that much explosion radius, so it's not going to kill that many people unless you airburst it perfectly. Now, a couple honorable mentions for the grenades category would be the RGO and the bundle charge. You could probably incorporate these into the melee playstyle quite well, kind of like the T-13 and the pipe bomb. But at the end of the day, I feel like you might get more kills with the grenades than actual melee kills, so that's why I'm not really including these, but they probably have some usage. Now, this next section might be the most important section of this video.
Is the simulation being controlled by other beings? Then let's test it. Hello, other beings. If you're out there, show us a sign. What if I just turn around right now and see back?
The last and most important thing I believe about melees is you've got to kind of like get into your opponent's head. You've got to use your grenades, use your movement, use map knowledge, use everything from before. You got to twist it all into your own advantage, because anyone who melees knows that you're just like at a disadvantage, because let's be honest, this is a troll play style. Everyone who melees is doing it for the fun. At least I am. That's what I think. I've never taken melees too seriously, and it's just more fun that way. But you gotta get your enemies to push at you. You've gotta make them make a mistake. You, on the other hand, can't really like make too many mistakes, otherwise you just get fried, especially with how the meta is these days. I don't even go positive half the time I play on some maps anymore. So unless I play like Height and like 2 other maps, I like kind of struggle now because of how the game's evolved. And that isn't like my fault, it's just like how the game is now, and I couldn't imagine how bad it is for like some other people. But at the end of the day, if you melee, you just gotta play smart, you gotta be patient. And sorry I don't like have much gameplay for most of this. This is kind of like the conclusion of the video. As at this point, there's not really much more I could show. Like, everything I'm talking about right now in terms of mind games, you just kind of have to troll around with people and learn how to like counter people, how people will act, that kind of thing. It's not something easily teachable. It just comes from playtime and knowing understanding how people work. Now, being that this is kind of also my conclusion, I want to thank everyone here that's made it this far into the video, and I look forward to making more videos kind of like this in a way. Hopefully not as long as this video. This is my longest video yet, but the link for my Discord will be in the description, and as well as my Twitch if you guys want to come check out and hang out and stuff. I think that's going to be it for the Melee video though. Peace.